Palpatine's lightsaber is one of the most iconic weapons in Star Wars, yet it's also one of the most despised. The Jedi hated it, and surprisingly so did Darth Vader. So what exactly made the Emperor's weapon so offensive that even his own apprentice wanted nothing to do with it? The reason why has everything to do with what lightsabers represent. Lightsabers are known to reflect the inner self of whoever builds them, which is why a Jedi's weapon shows humility and connection to the Force, while a Sith's weapon shows power and superiority. Palpatine's lightsaber was no different, because it reflected exactly who he was: arrogant, manipulative, and convinced he was above everyone around him. And that contempt was impossible to hide. Whether sensed through the Force or simply seen in the weapon's lavish design, two enemies who never agreed on anything still reacted the same way to one weapon. Drawing from both canon and legends, the reasons why reveal something unexpected about the most dangerous Sith Lord in galactic history. But before understanding why everyone hated this weapon, we need to understand what made it so unusual in the first place. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine ignites his red-bladed Sith lightsaber for the first time. To this date, this remains one of the most memorable moments in the entire saga, the moment when the kindly Chancellor finally revealed the monster he had always been. In Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the visual dictionary, James Luceno describes Palpatine as a patron of the arts who brought that same obsession to his weapon's construction, designing it with a high level of craftsmanship influenced by his love of antiquity. Palpatine built his first lightsaber during his apprenticeship under Darth Plagueis, and from the very beginning, it was designed as a statement piece meant to communicate power, and it was precisely this view that made the weapon so offensive to everyone who encountered it. For the Jedi, that hatred ran deep because Palpatine's lightsaber defied nearly every principle they held as sacred. The Jedi philosophy emphasized humility above almost everything else, teaching that a Jedi should own what they needed and nothing more. Their lightsabers were meant to be functional tools for defense and peace, never displays of wealth or status, because the entire Jedi way of life rejected material excess as a path toward attachment and corruption. And Palpatine's saber was the exact opposite. The same visual dictionary on Revenge of the Sith describes its expensive construction: frick alloy for the body, rhodium for the emitter, and a refined electrum finish. Frick alloy is one of the rarest metals in the galaxy, known for being nearly impossible to destroy, and even lightsaber blades struggled to cut through it, which made it an unusual choice for a weapon hilt, given that Palpatine clearly expected his weapon to survive direct combat with other lightsabers. Rhodium, on the other hand, is a yellow metal rarer than gold that served no combat purpose, existing only to display extreme wealth and status to anyone who saw it. Meanwhile, electrum plating carries special meaning in Jedi tradition, as depicted in legends, awarded only to the most noble and accomplished masters after decades of service, representing wisdom earned through experience and spiritual growth achieved through discipline. Only a handful of Jedi in any generation would earn this honor, with masters like Mace Windu counted among those who had received electrum-plated hilts. Palpatine's use of it on a Sith weapon was a clear message that their traditions meant nothing, and their honors now belonged to him. In fact, the use of these materials was a display of superiority that screamed a message any Jedi would find offensive. Yet the insult did not end with the weapon's construction, because how Palpatine chose to keep it revealed something even darker about his intentions. Jedi carried their lightsabers openly, with the weapon hanging from their belt for everyone to see. This practice was not just for practical reasons, but deeply philosophical, because the visible lightsaber represented peace and honest intentions. And Palpatine did the exact opposite for decades. According to James Luceno's Darth Plagueis, he concealed his weapon inside a statue of Sistros in his Senate office, where it waited in absolute darkness while Jedi masters like Yoda and Mace Windu walked past countless times without sensing what lay hidden just feet away. Worse, when Palpatine finally revealed his lightsaber, it wasn't drawn in defense, but ignited for assassination. But the concealment was only the surface of what made this weapon offensive to the Jedi, because what powered the blade revealed something far worse. The way the Jedi and Sith obtained their lightsaber crystals could not be more different, and this difference strikes at the heart of what separates the two orders. In canon, Jedi younglings traveled to sacred caves on Ilum, where kyber crystals grow naturally, meditating and opening themselves to the Force until a crystal calls to them. The crystal chooses the Jedi in a sacred partnership built on harmony and mutual connection, which is why each Jedi's weapon feels uniquely bonded to its wielder. Sith, on the other hand, follow a completely different path. Based on the canon material established in Charles Soule's comic series Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, they take kyber crystals and force them to serve through a process called bleeding, which involves pouring pain, rage, and hatred into the crystal until it turns red. The crystal resists this process with everything it has, and some have been known to fight back so hard that they crack or shatter entirely rather than submit. The process can be agonizing, with the Sith dominating the crystal's will until it has no choice but to serve its new master. Thus, the Sith don't bond with crystals the way Jedi do. They dominate and break them until submission is the only option left. To the Jedi, this process represented everything the dark side corrupts, transforming what should have been a sacred partner into a twisted slave, screaming in perpetual agony. In Legends, Palpatine's saber used a synthetic crystal. However, in modern canon, his lightsabers contain corrupted kyber crystals, though the specific circumstances of their bleeding remain unstated. But to any Jedi who sensed it through the Force, the weapon felt wrong because it radiated the pain and suffering of its creation, serving as a constant reminder of how the dark side twists everything it touches. However, sensing the weapon's corruption was one thing, because watching Palpatine wield it was something else entirely. His fighting style confirmed their worst fears about the dark side. He had mastered Form 7, known as Juyo, the most aggressive lightsaber form in existence and the one the Jedi Council had forbidden most practitioners from even studying. Daniel Wallace's The Jedi Path explains that Juyo required channeling raw anger and unpredictability with every strike, dancing so dangerously close to the dark side that the form demanded users tap into aggressive emotions that created a constant risk of falling. The form was considered so volatile that even Jedi who began learning it with the purest intentions often found themselves corrupted by its requirements. Most Jedi who attempted to learn Juyo either abandoned the training after recognizing the danger or fell to the dark side entirely, which is why only Mace Windu had developed a safe variant called Vapad that channeled an opponent's darkness back against them. Even Windu walked a razor's edge every time he used it, and the Council considered the form so dangerous that they actively discouraged its study among all but the most disciplined masters. When Palpatine fought, he embodied the very corruption the Jedi had always warned about. His movements were erratic but deadly as he cut through Jedi Masters with terrifying efficiency, and his mastery of the Forbidden Form proved that their nightmares about the dark side were completely justified. The Jedi had spent centuries warning about this very darkness, and now they would witness it consume their entire order. Most significantly, this weapon became the instrument of the Jedi Order's destruction in the events depicted in Revenge of the Sith. With this lightsaber, Palpatine struck down Agen Kolar, Saesee Tiin, and Kit Fisto in mere seconds, eliminating some of the Order's finest warriors and members of the Jedi Council itself so quickly that fans still debate whether Palpatine had some advantage or was simply that powerful. The same lightsaber was present minutes before Mace Windu fell from the window of Palpatine's office, and it was there when Anakin Skywalker made his fateful choice to save the Sith Lord rather than let Windu end the threat. In that moment, Anakin severed Windu's hand, leaving the Jedi Master defenseless against Palpatine's Force lightning. That single decision triggered the events leading directly to Order 66 and the fall of the Jedi Order, which means that to any surviving Jedi scattered across the galaxy, Palpatine's lightsaber became the symbol of their complete destruction, a legacy of betrayal that ended 1,000 years of guardianship in a single night. The Jedi had every reason to hate this weapon for what it represented and what it had done, but they weren't alone in their hatred. Palpatine's own apprentice came to despise his master's weapon just as much, though for completely different reasons. After Mustafar, Darth Vader was no longer the athletic warrior he had been as Anakin Skywalker. His new body came with severe limitations: massive armored gloves designed for protection rather than dexterity, thick fingers unable to perform precise movements, limited wrist mobility because of mechanical joints, and a breathing apparatus that added weight and restricted his torso rotation. The suit that kept him alive also imprisoned him, turning every movement into a conscious effort where there had once been natural grace. Meanwhile, Palpatine's lightsaber hilts were small, curved, and short-handled, designed for one-handed Form 7 combat with quick, agile wrist movements. The elegant design assumed that the user had full dexterity and natural mobility, and Vader had neither. That is why, for him, gripping Palpatine's elegant little hilt was awkward at best and painful at worst, because the weapon literally did not fit in his own hands. Moreover, the physical problems went deeper than just the grip. Vader relied on Form 5, called Gemso, which emphasized heavy two-handed strikes built around power over finesse, using large, durable hilts to overwhelm opponents with brute strength. This style suited Vader's new mechanical body perfectly, allowing him to use his artificial limbs to deliver crushing blows that few opponents could withstand. Palpatine's Form 7, on the other hand, required agile acrobatics, quick flick-like movements, and erratic, unpredictable patterns that demanded physical mobility that Vader simply no longer had. His suit restricted his range of motion, his breathing apparatus added weight and bulk, and the fast-spinning attacks that Palpatine made looked effortless but were physically impossible for Vader to perform. Using his master's lightsaber would have made Vader weaker, not stronger. However, what really bothered Vader was his master's attitude toward lightsabers entirely. In James Luceno's novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Palpatine explains his philosophy directly, telling Vader that the Sith grew past the use of lightsabers but continued to use them if only to humiliate the Jedi. He used them for ceremony, intimidation, and mocking Jedi tradition, viewing them as props in a performance rather than actual weapons of war. He believed true Sith power came from the Force itself, not from elegant metal tubes. Vader saw this completely differently. He was out there hunting Jedi survivors, confronting rebels, and enforcing the Emperor's will through combat every day, so he knew he needed a real weapon. When he handled Palpatine's saber, he realized he was holding what he later viewed as a piece of jewelry, a decoration that happened to have a blade, rather than a battle-ready weapon designed for repeated heavy combat. Yet, after establishing the Empire, Palpatine essentially retired his lightsabers, relying solely on the Force and political manipulation, while the weapons faded into history. He no longer needed them because he had an entire galaxy to do his fighting for him. Contrastingly, for Vader, a master who discarded his lightsaber was unthinkable. He saw lightsabers as symbols of Sith dominance and proof of warrior skill, so his master treating them as disposable tools felt like an insult to everything Vader was doing in the field. Eventually, Vader solved this problem by crafting his own lightsaber. According to the canon comic series Darth Vader: Dark Lord of the Sith, Vader built a weapon that was larger, simpler, and brutally efficient, purpose-built for his armored body and power-based fighting style. He took the kyber crystal from a Jedi he had killed and bled it through sheer hatred and pain, creating a crimson blade that was entirely his own. The hilt fit his mechanical hands perfectly, with enough thickness to grip securely even through armored gloves. The weight suited his artificial strength, which was actually greater than his natural strength had ever been, and the design allowed for the heavy two-handed strikes that defined his combat approach. After experiencing Palpatine's impractical sabers, Vader swore never to use them again. His own weapon became his identity, functional, powerful, and built for actual combat. The difference between their lightsabers reflected the difference between master and apprentice. Palpatine saw weapons as theater, whereas Vader saw them as tools of war. Despite viewing his lightsabers as mere tools of intimidation, Palpatine did use them on several notable occasions, outside of his combat with Mace Windu in Revenge of the Sith, each demonstrating both his terrifying skill and his preference for avoiding direct combat whenever possible. The duel on Mandalore in 20 BBY showed Palpatine at his most deadly. As seen in the Clone Wars animated series, Sidious traveled to Mandalore to confront his former apprentice, Darth Maul, and Maul's brother, Savage Opress, bringing both of his lightsabers for this confrontation. His movements were fluid yet unpredictable, confusing his opponents while landing devastating strikes. He stunned Savage Opress with a swift kick before fatally impaling him through the chest with both lightsabers simultaneously. When Maul stood alone against his former master, he quickly realized the difference between a Sith apprentice and a true Sith Lord. Palpatine toyed with him before defeating him decisively, sparing his life only because he had other uses for his former apprentice. In Revenge of the Sith, following his confrontation with Mace Windu, Palpatine faced Yoda in the Senate Chamber, one of the most symbolic locations in the galaxy where democracy itself had died just hours before. Palpatine wielded his weapon against the greatest Jedi Master the Order had ever produced, meeting him blade to blade without hesitation, despite Yoda's nearly 900 years of experience. For a brief time, the two most powerful Force users in the galaxy clashed in a duel that would determine the fate of the Jedi Order forever. The fight eventually shifted from lightsaber combat to a pure contest of force power, with both combatants hurling Senate pods at each other. This escalation from blades to raw force energy supports the idea that Palpatine never truly relied on his lightsaber. The weapon was useful when needed, but his real power came from the Force itself. In canon continuity, Sidious used one of his crimson blades while stranded on Ryloth, where he and Vader fought their way through a swarm of deadly lilacs after their Star Destroyer was attacked by rebels. However, such occasions were rare because, for the most part, Palpatine preferred to let others do his fighting, while he controlled events from the shadows. As seen in the Clone Wars episode The Lawless, Palpatine created a second identical lightsaber, which was later modified with a mysterious black alloy for reasons that remain unknown. The existence of a backup reflects how Palpatine operated in every aspect of his life. He maintained multiple political identities, contingency plans spanning decades, and even redundancy in weapons he rarely used. For him, nothing was left to chance. Additionally, the hatred that both Jedi and Vader felt toward Palpatine's lightsaber reveals something important about the Sith Lord himself, especially when compared to how other Sith approach their weapons. Darth Maul built a double-bladed saber designed purely for aggressive combat and intimidation because Maul was a warrior first who defined himself through physical dominance and raw hatred. Count Dooku also crafted a curved hilt specifically for elegant dueling, reflecting his aristocratic nature and mastery of Form 2. And despite his political scheming, Dooku genuinely respected the lightsaber as a weapon worthy of a true duelist. He saw himself as a gentleman warrior, and his weapon reflected that self-image perfectly. Overall, Palpatine's approach stood apart from every Sith who came before him. His weapon was ornate, where theirs were practical, hidden, where theirs were displayed, and treated as jewelry, where theirs were treated as extensions of their identity. Maul, Dooku, and Vader all defined themselves partially through their lightsabers, seeing the weapon as a statement of who they were and what they could do. Palpatine never shared this view. Unlike other Siths, he considered the lightsaber beneath him, a relic of a more primitive age when Sith Lords had to fight their own battles. This difference reveals the core of his character. He never saw himself as a warrior at all. While other Sith craved the thrill of combat and the satisfaction of defeating enemies with their own hands, Palpatine found such pursuits tedious. He was a manipulator who occasionally needed to kill, and his lightsaber existed only for those rare moments when deception and political maneuvering weren't enough. To him, the weapon was a contingency plan, not an identity. In this way, Palpatine achieved something no other Sith ever had. He He created a weapon that managed to offend both his enemies and his own apprentice. The Jedi despised it, Vader refused it, and Palpatine himself barely cared about it.